The late summer sun painted the sky over Hunan province with shades of amber and crimson, stretching its rays across rice fields that seemed to sway like waves in the evening wind. The village of Qinghe lay quietly nestled between hills and rivers, untouched by the rush of modern cities. Children's laughter echoed faintly in the distance as farmers returned home with tools slung over their shoulders. Life here was slow, unpretentious, and bound by tradition. On the edge of the village, a bus groaned to a halt. Its rusty door creaked open, and a young man stepped out, carrying nothing but a worn leather satchel. His clothes were plain, an inexpensive white shirt rolled at the sleeves and dark slacks dusted from travel. Yet, for those with a keen eye, there was something different about him. His posture was too straight, his shoes too clean for a man who claimed to be poor, and his dark eyes held a sharpness rarely seen in the countryside. This was Li Wei, heir to the sprawling Li conglomerate, a business empire stretching from real estate to technology across China and beyond. To the outside world, Li Wei was supposed to be preparing to inherit billions, groomed to be the next titan of industry. But tonight, in this quiet village, he was just a man running from the suffocating chains of expectation. He had left behind skyscrapers and limousines, exchanged tailored suits for second-hand clothes, and cut off his phone that buzzed endlessly with calls from board members, family, and socialites. For the first time in years, he could breathe. Qinghe Village School, he murmured, scanning the small wooden sign nailed onto a post at the edge of the road. It pointed him toward a path lined with willows. His heart beat faster. From today, he would live not as a billionaire heir, but as a poor village teacher, a role he had secured through a discreet donation under another name. The villagers believed he was simply a college graduate who couldn't find a better job in the city. It was the perfect disguise. The school was modest. 2 squat buildings of faded brick, a dusty courtyard, and a cracked basketball hoop leaning against the wind. The evening bell had already rung, and students had scattered home. Only a few faint chalk marks remained on the blackboard visible through an open window. It was a far cry from the international schools Li Wei had once toured for charity galas, but somehow the simplicity of it all stirred something in him. A longing he couldn't name. As he approached the gate, he noticed a young woman struggling with a stack of books. She was petite, dressed in a simple blouse and a long skirt, her hair tied in a loose bun that had begun to unravel from the day's work. Her hands were ink-stained, her brow slightly furrowed as she tried to balance the heavy pile. Li Wei instinctively quickened his pace. "Let me help you," he said, reaching out before she dropped them. Startled, she looked up, her eyes wide and clear as spring water. For a moment, he forgot the script of his disguise, forgot that he was supposed to act like a humble, inexperienced teacher. Her gaze disarmed him. "Oh, thank you," she said softly, handing him part of the load. "You must be the new teacher?" He nodded. "Yes. My name is Li Wei. I just arrived." Her lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "Welcome to Qinghe Village School. I'm Zhao Liyun, the headmistress here." The word headmistress surprised him. She looked so young, barely in her late 20s, if that. And yet, there was an air of quiet resilience about her, a strength not worn on her sleeve, but embedded in the way she carried herself. She motioned for him to follow. Together, they placed the books in a small office lined with dusty shelves and a single flickering fan. The room smelled faintly of chalk and old wood. "You'll be teaching combined classes," she explained, tucking a stray hair behind her ear. "We don't have enough staff, so sometimes one teacher handles 2 grades at once. I hope that won't be a problem." Li Wei smiled faintly. "Not at all. I'll do my best." Her eyes softened at his answer. Many city teachers who came here through temporary programs often complained or left within weeks. Something about this new arrival, though, his calmness, his lack of hesitation, stirred a faint warmth in her chest. That night, Li Wei was shown to a tiny dormitory room behind the school. A wooden bed, a thin mattress, and a single bulb hanging from the ceiling greeted him. For a man who once had a penthouse overlooking the Shanghai skyline, it was shockingly bare. Yet, as he lay on the creaky bed, He felt more at peace than he had in years. Through the cracked window, he could hear crickets, the rustle of trees, and distant laughter of families gathering for dinner. No horns, no boardroom arguments, no false compliments from people who only wanted his money. "Here, I am no one," he whispered to himself. "Here, maybe, I can be free." But as the night deepened, his thoughts returned to Zhao Liyun. Her unassuming grace, her quiet determination to run a struggling school with so little, it unsettled him. Unlike the women he knew in the city, dressed in jewels and rehearsed smiles, she was real. And that scared him more than he cared to admit. Meanwhile, Zhao Liyun sat at her desk under the glow of a small lamp, reviewing tomorrow's lesson plans. Yet, her mind wandered back to the newcomer. Li Wei. There was something about him she couldn't quite place. His clothes and words were simple, yet his bearing, his eyes, spoke of a world beyond this village. She shook the thought away. "Don't be foolish, Liyun," she whispered to herself. "He's just another teacher. Nothing more." But deep down, a quiet voice told her she had just met someone who would change everything. And so, in the heart of Qinghe village, beneath a canopy of stars, two lives began to intertwine. One fleeing from the weight of fortune, the other bound by duty and simplicity. Neither knew the storm that awaited them, or how love would test the worlds they came from. But fate had already begun its quiet work. Morning in Qinghe village arrived not with the roar of traffic, but with the chorus of roosters and the rhythmic clang of metal pots as mothers prepared breakfast. Sunlight streamed through thin curtains, waking Li Wei earlier than he expected. He sat up on the narrow bed, rubbing his neck from the stiffness of the mattress. For a man who once woke to silk sheets and room service, this adjustment should have felt unbearable. Yet strangely, he welcomed it. After a quick wash from the basin of cold water outside, he walked toward the classroom assigned to him. Children were already waiting, barefoot, their clothes patched, but their eyes alight with curiosity. Some whispered and giggled when they saw him, clearly intrigued by the new face. "Teacher! Teacher!" A boy of about 9 shouted. "Is it true you came from the city? Do you know Kung Fu? Do you have a car?" Laughter rippled across the group. Li Wei chuckled, crouching to meet the boy's gaze. "I don't know Kung Fu," he said with a smile, "and I don't have a car. But I can teach you math, and maybe a little bit of English. Will that do?" The children exchanged looks, then cheered. Inside the classroom, however, reality was harsher. The desks were old and uneven, chalk was nearly finished, and half the books were missing covers. Still, Li Wei felt something stir in his chest as he began the lesson. Teaching wasn't easy. His students were restless, sometimes distracted by hunger or the noise of animals outside, but their eagerness to learn shone through every question they asked. At noon, Zhao Liyun appeared at the doorway. She leaned slightly against the frame, watching the new teacher guide the children through an exercise. His posture was steady, his voice patient, and even when the children made mistakes, he corrected them with encouragement rather than scolding. She hadn't expected that. Most young teachers who came from outside grew frustrated quickly. But this man, he seemed to belong here already, as though the dusty classroom was not beneath him, but a challenge he accepted with grace. When the class ended, Li Wei wiped the chalk dust from his hands and found her waiting. "You did well," she said softly. He blinked, surprised. "You were watching?" Her lips curved slightly. "Of course. It's my duty as principal." "But," she hesitated, her voice warming, "you have a way with them. They like you." Li Wei gave a modest shrug, masking the flicker of pride he felt. "Children are honest. If you treat them sincerely, they'll return it." For a moment, Zhao Liyun simply studied him. His words weren't the kind she expected from someone who looked as though he'd known comfort in life. There it was again, that contradiction she couldn't quite resolve. Later that day, during lunch in the staff room, a humble space with a single wooden table, Zhao Liyun placed a simple meal before him: steamed rice, stir-fried vegetables, and a small bowl of soup. "You don't need to do this," Li Wei said, surprised. She shook her head. "Teachers here often eat together. It saves money, and, well, it feels like family." Family. The word struck him harder than he expected. In the Li household, family meant business alliances, contracts, and obligations. But here, in this tiny school, it meant sharing food, sharing burdens, sharing laughter. He nodded quietly, grateful. As they ate, she asked, "Why did you choose to come here? You're young, educated. Surely you could find work in the city." Li Wei's chopsticks paused midair. For a fleeting second, panic threatened to crack his disguise. He steadied himself quickly, lowering his gaze. "I grew tired of the city," he said finally. "Too crowded, too noisy. I wanted something quieter. Somewhere I could do something meaningful." It wasn't entirely a lie. Her expression softened, and she nodded. "Then you chose well. The children here need people like you." In the days that followed, Li Wei settled into village life. He learned to fetch water from the well, to bargain at the market where villagers sold fresh vegetables, and to walk dirt roads that turned to mud when it rained. At night, instead of neon lights, he saw constellations stretch across the sky in a tapestry he'd never noticed in the city. And always, there was Zhao Liyun. She moved through the school with quiet authority, staying late to mark papers, rising early to prepare supplies. She wasn't stern, but she carried herself with a dignity that commanded respect from both students and teachers. And yet, beneath that composure, Li Wei noticed her innocence. She blushed when thanked, fumbled when asked about herself, and seemed unaware of her own beauty. One evening, he found her struggling with a broken window latch in her office. The night wind howled, scattering her papers. Without a word, he stepped in, holding the window steady until she could close it. Their hands brushed, and for a moment, the air between them stilled. "Thank you," she whispered, her cheeks flushing. Li Wei's chest tightened unexpectedly. This wasn't the practiced flirtation of city women chasing his wealth. This was real, unguarded, and fragile. And it terrified him. But shadows lurked even in this quiet village. One afternoon, as Li Wei finished class, a man in a faded suit approached him. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You're the new teacher, aren't you?" the man asked. "Yes," Li Wei replied evenly. "I'm Mr. Huang, from the district office. I handle staffing here. Strange, we don't usually get outsiders who stay long. What's your real reason for coming?" Li Wei's jaw tightened, but before he could answer, Zhao Liyun appeared. "Mr. Huang," she said firmly, "our school desperately needed help, and Teacher Li has been nothing but dedicated. Please don't discourage him." The official eyed them both, then muttered, "We'll see," before leaving. When he was gone, Li Wei exhaled slowly. Zhao Liyun glanced at him with concern. "Don't mind him. He thinks he knows everything, but he doesn't. Just be careful. Outsiders are often judged here." Li Wei studied her earnest expression and felt a wave of protectiveness he couldn't explain. She didn't know who he really was, what power he wielded outside these fields. To her, he was just a poor teacher. And for the first time, he wanted to stay that way. That night, as the schoolyard lay silent under the moon, Li Wei stood alone, hands in his pockets. His disguise was holding, but for how long? Could he truly live this life, stripped of privilege, bound only by sincerity? He thought of Zhao Liyun, the innocence in her smile, the fire in her eyes when she defended him. She was nothing like the people in his world. And he feared, deeply, that when she discovered who he really was, her trust would shatter. For now, he would keep his secret. For now, he would let her see him only as the poor teacher. Because in her eyes, for the first time in his life, he felt enough. The following week in Qinghe village unfolded with its usual rhythm. Children running across the dusty playground, farmers passing by with woven baskets, the smell of freshly cooked noodles drifting from the nearby stalls. To the villagers, little ever changed. Yet for Li Wei, every passing day was a balancing act, between hiding who he was and embracing who he was becoming. He awoke earlier than most, sometimes before dawn, walking the dirt paths alone. It was habit from his old life, rising early to review contracts, to beat competitors, to stay one step ahead. Here, there were no boardrooms or ledgers, only the sounds of sparrows and the splash of water at the well. Still, he carried himself with a posture that betrayed discipline, one that didn't quite match the identity of a humble village teacher. That morning, Zhao Liyun noticed it. She was walking past the courtyard when she saw him with sleeves rolled up, helping a group of boys fix the school's broken flagpole. His movements were precise, his instructions calm yet firm, and when he knotted the rope, his fingers worked with the confidence of someone who had been trained in more than just books. The children cheered when the flag finally rose, fluttering against the pale blue sky. Li Wei stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. "You did that quickly," Zhao Liyun remarked, approaching him. It looked almost practiced. Li Wei offered a small smile. "I used to fix things often." She tilted her head, studying him. "In the city?" His gaze wavered for the briefest moment before he nodded. "Yes." "In the city." Something in her eyes lingered on him, as if she sensed a piece of truth left unsaid. But she didn't press. Instead, she smiled faintly. "The children admire you. Be careful not to spoil them too much, or they'll refuse to listen to anyone else." Li Wei chuckled. "Then I suppose I'll have to share the stage with you, Principal Zhao." At that, her cheeks flushed lightly, though she masked it with a polite nod. Later that day, during lunch break, an incident disrupted the quiet harmony of the school. A group of older boys from another village had wandered into the yard, mocking the younger students. One snatched a book from a girl's hands and tossed it into the dirt. Before Zhao Liyun could intervene, Li Wei stepped forward. "Enough," he said, his voice low but commanding. The boys froze. Something in his tone, sharp, firm, unyielding, made them hesitate. He wasn't shouting, but authority radiated from him like heat from a fire. One of the boys sneered, testing him. "Who are you to order us around? You're just some poor teacher." Li Wei's eyes narrowed, steady and cold in a way that silenced even the sneer. For a fleeting second, the weight of his true self, the heir who had silenced boardrooms, who had made grown men flinch with a single decision, slipped through his disguise. The boy swallowed hard, suddenly unsure, and muttered, "Fine. We're leaving." The group dispersed quickly, casting nervous glances over their shoulders. The playground grew quiet again. Children gathered around Li Wei, whispering in awe. Zhao Liyun, however, stared at him differently. "That was impressive," she said cautiously, once the children had scattered. "You didn't raise your voice, yet they obeyed." Li Wei forced a relaxed smile. "Sometimes firmness is enough. Children, no matter their age, need boundaries." But inside, his heart raced. He had revealed too much. That evening, Zhao Liyun invited him to her office to discuss the incident. The room was lit by a single oil lamp, papers scattered across the desk. "You handled it well," she admitted, sitting opposite him. "But it felt like, you've done this before. You carry authority as though you were born to it." Li Wei hesitated. Her gaze was steady, gentle yet probing. It was not suspicion, but curiosity, the kind that threatened to unravel secrets if given time. "I had responsibilities before," he said vaguely. "Not in teaching, but elsewhere." She frowned slightly. "Responsibilities?" "Yes," he replied, keeping his tone soft. Ones I'd rather not speak about. Silence filled the room, broken only by the flicker of the lamp. Then Zhao Liyun leaned back, nodding slowly. Everyone has things they'd rather not speak about. I won't press. Her restraint surprised him. In his old world, people clawed at each other's secrets like vultures. Here, she respected his boundaries. And that unsettled him more than interrogation would have. Days blurred into weeks, and Li Wei found himself increasingly drawn to her presence. He noticed how she tucked stray strands of hair behind her ear when she read, how her brow furrowed in concentration when calculating the school's meager budget, how her laughter, rare and unguarded, lit up the entire staff room. One afternoon, he found her struggling to balance the school's ledger. She sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. The funds barely cover supplies, she murmured. If we had just a little more, we could buy new books. Li Wei leaned over her shoulder, glancing at the numbers. For someone who once managed billions in assets, the sums were almost laughable. Yet he felt a pang of helplessness. He couldn't simply pull out his fortune here without exposing himself. Still, his instincts stirred. What if we organized a fundraiser, he suggested. Something the villagers could participate in. A fair, perhaps. Performances, food stalls. Even the children could join. She blinked at him, surprised. That's actually a good idea. He smiled faintly. I've seen similar things succeed before. She studied him again, that same searching look in her eyes. Sometimes I wonder, she said softly, who you really are, Teacher Li. The words made his chest tighten. He forced a light laugh. Just a man who cares for the children, Principal Zhao. But deep down, he knew her intuition was dangerously close to the truth. The first cracks in his disguise widened one rainy evening. Thunder rolled across the mountains as Li Wei walked through the village, helping children reach home safely. In his rush, he slipped on the muddy path, and his satchel spilled open. Among the scattered items lay a sleek, engraved pen, solid gold, unmistakably custom-made, with his family's insignia discreetly etched near the clip. One of the children gasped, picking it up. Teacher, this is expensive. Li Wei's heart lurched. He snatched it gently but firmly, shoving it back into his satchel. His smile faltered. It's just a gift from an old friend. But Zhao Liyun, who had been following with an umbrella, caught the emblem's faint glimmer before he hit it. Her eyes widened slightly, though she said nothing. As they walked back together in silence, she felt her heart beat with an odd mixture of suspicion and intrigue. Who exactly was Li Wei? That night, alone in his room, Li Wei stared at the pen in his hand. His grandfather's voice echoed in his mind. This emblem carries the weight of our legacy. Never forget who you are. He clenched his fist. Here, he was a poor teacher. To Zhao Liyun, he was a colleague, perhaps a friend. He couldn't risk more than that. Yet part of him longed to show her everything, to let her know the truth, and see if she would still look at him the same way. For now, the secret remained locked. But he knew it couldn't be forever. Because secrets had a way of surfacing, especially in the quietest of villages. For weeks, Li Wei had felt truly alive. Teaching at the little village school had given him a sense of belonging he never knew he craved. The mornings began with the sound of roosters and the laughter of children racing to the classroom. The evenings ended with stories under lantern light, often shared with Mei Lin, whose gentle smile seemed to have the power to erase the burden of his past. But no matter how far he ran, shadows had a way of following. One afternoon, while Li Wei was helping a group of students paint pictures of their dreams, one boy drew himself as a doctor, another as a farmer with endless fields. He noticed a black car parked across the dirt road. The car stood out like a crow among doves, sleek, expensive, and utterly foreign to the rustic setting of Longha. His heart dropped instantly. Li Wei. Mei Lin's voice pulled him back. She tilted her head, curiosity soft in her expression. Are you all right? He forced a smile. Yes, just lost in thought. Let's see what Chen drew, shall we? But his eyes kept darting toward the window, where the car remained, unmoving. That evening, when the children had gone home and Mei Lin was locking the classroom doors, Li Wei lingered in the courtyard. He could feel eyes watching him. And then, out of the shadows, a tall figure emerged. An older man in a tailored suit, the faint glimmer of a family crest pinned to his lapel. "Master Li Wei," the man said with a deep bow, his voice formal yet tinged with reproach. "At last, I have found you." Li Wei stiffened. He hadn't heard that title in months. The world he had abandoned suddenly stood before him again. "You shouldn't be here," Li Wei hissed, glancing around nervously. "This village is not part of that world." "The board is growing restless," the man replied firmly. "Your father's health is failing, and the succession must be addressed. You cannot play schoolteacher while an empire waits." "I am not playing." Li Wei's voice was sharp. "These children, this life, it is real. Far more real than boardrooms and false smiles." The man's expression hardened. "And the woman, this principal, Mei Lin, she knows nothing of who you are. Do you think she will accept you when the truth surfaces? You risk everything, her trust, your family's legacy." Li Wei clenched his fists. His carefully built world, fragile yet precious, felt as though it was crumbling. "Leave," he ordered. "You will say nothing to anyone." "Not yet." The man bowed again, reluctantly. "As you wish, master. But secrets have a way of breaking free, whether you like it or not." When Li Wei turned back toward the schoolhouse, Mei Lin stood at the doorway. Her eyes were narrowed, lips pressed into a thin line. "Who was that?" she asked quietly. His breath caught. For a moment, silence stretched like a noose. "An old acquaintance," he finally said, forcing calm. "Nothing important." But Mei Lin wasn't convinced. "You looked different. Like someone I don't know." Her gaze searched his face, as though peeling away the layers he had so carefully put up. Li Wei wanted to tell her everything, to lay bare the truth that he wasn't just a poor teacher, but the heir to a business dynasty vast enough to touch every corner of the nation. Yet fear held him back. Fear that her gentle warmth would vanish, replaced by the cold distance of awe or resentment. So he smiled, weakly. "I'm still me, Mei Lin. Just me." She hesitated, then gave a faint nod, though doubt lingered in her eyes. That night, as Li Wei lay awake in his small room, he thought of the man's words, of the empire waiting, and of Mei Lin's questioning gaze. The two worlds he had tried to keep apart were beginning to collide, and he knew the collision would not be gentle. The shadows of his past had arrived in Longhe, and they would not leave quietly. The days that followed were heavier than before. For Li Wei, every moment at the school felt shadowed by the encounter with the suited messenger. Though he tried to continue teaching with the same enthusiasm, his laughter was a fraction too forced, his smiles too fleeting. Mei Lin noticed. She had always prided herself on her intuition. Running a school with limited funds and endless challenges had taught her to read people quickly. And Li Wei, this mysterious teacher who had appeared out of nowhere, was a puzzle she couldn't stop thinking about. One morning, as they prepared lesson plans together in her office, she set her pen down and spoke carefully. "Li Wei," she said softly, "I've never asked where you came from before you arrived here. But lately, it feels like you're carrying something. Something you don't want to share." He froze, his hands tightening on the chalk he had been holding. "Does it matter where I came from? I'm here now. That should be enough." Mei Lin studied him. His tone wasn't defensive, it was almost pleading, as if telling her the truth would cost him everything. She wanted to push, but the vulnerability in his eyes held her back. Still, doubt had been planted. Later that week, the small village buzzed with an unusual event. A delegation from the city had arrived to survey land for a new development project. Luxury cars rolled through the dirt roads, and the villagers whispered in awe. For many, it was the first time they had seen such wealth up close. Among the delegation was a tall man in his 30s, sharply dressed, who carried himself with the arrogance of someone used to commanding rooms. When his eyes fell on Li Wei, standing by the school gate, helping children carry their books, his lips curved into a knowing smile. "Well, if it isn't the lost heir," the man drawled. Li Wei stiffened. Zhao Jian. Zhao Jian's smirk widened. So it's true. The prince of the empire has been hiding in the countryside, playing teacher. Your father will be disappointed. He glanced at Mei Lin, who was approaching, curiosity in her steps. Or perhaps you're hiding for other reasons. Before Li Wei could respond, Mei Lin reached them. Good afternoon. May I help you, sir? Zhao Jian turned to her, his charm switching on effortlessly. You must be the principal. What a delight. I'm Zhao Jian, from the Zhao Corporation. We're considering opportunities in this region. He shook her hand with polished ease, but his eyes flicked to Li Wei, full of mischief. Li Wei, you never mentioned you had such dedicated colleagues, Zhao Jian teased. Mei Lin frowned slightly. You know each other. Li Wei's jaw tightened. We crossed paths once. Zhao Jian chuckled, clearly enjoying the tension. Oh, we're more than acquaintances. In fact, Li Wei and I go back a long way. But I suppose he hasn't shared that part of himself with you, has he? Mei Lin glanced between them, confusion deepening. Li Wei's silence only made her uneasier. Finally, she excused herself, but the question lingered in her mind like a splinter. Who exactly was Li Wei? That night, Mei Lin couldn't sleep. She replayed Zhao Jian's words, the way Li Wei had gone stiff, the strange car she had seen earlier. Her heart told her to trust Li Wei, but her mind whispered otherwise. Meanwhile, Li Wei sat alone under the moonlight outside his small room, Zhao Jian's smirk haunting him. He knew Zhao Jian wouldn't stay quiet. Rivalries in the business world were never clean. Zhao Jian would use every chance to expose him. And the worst part? Mei Lin was already beginning to doubt him. The mask Li Wei had worn so carefully was beginning to crack, and once it shattered, there would be no going back. The next few days in the village were restless. Zhao Jian lingered like a shadow, always appearing at the edges of Li Wei's world. He charmed the villagers with generous donations, delivered crates of supplies to the school, and whispered little remarks that left doubt in his wake. Such a fine teacher, living so humbly, Zhao Jian would say with a sly smile, patting Li Wei's shoulder. One would never guess where he truly comes from. Mei Lin noticed everything. She tried to dismiss it, but her heart was unsettled. One evening, as she finished locking the classrooms, she found Li Wei waiting outside with a troubled look. Principal Mei, he said quietly, if I asked you to trust me without explanations, would you? His eyes bore into hers, full of something she couldn't name. Fear, longing, desperation. She hesitated. Li Wei, I want to, but you're making it so hard. Before he could answer, a commotion rose in the village square. They rushed over to find Zhao Jian standing on a makeshift stage, addressing the curious crowd. Good people of this village, Zhao Jian called out, his voice rich with charisma, you deserve to know who walks among you. That humble teacher you admire so much is not who he claims to be. Gasps rippled through the villagers. Mei Lin's heart pounded. Zhao Jian pulled out his phone and projected a series of photos onto a white sheet hung by his assistants. Images of Li Wei in expensive suits, shaking hands with ministers, stepping out of luxury cars. Behold, Zhao Jian continued, Li Wei is none other than Li Wei, heir to the Li conglomerate, one of the most powerful business empires in the country. A billionaire, playing poor in your village. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some looked astonished, others betrayed. Children who adored their teacher clung to their mothers, confused. Mei Lin turned to Li Wei, her voice trembling. Is it true? Li Wei's lips parted, but no words came. The villagers pressed closer, whispering accusations. Why had he lied? Why had he come here? Finally, Zhao Jian leaned forward, delivering the cruelest cut. Tell me, Mei Lin, would you still trust a man who built your school on lies? Li Wei's fists clenched, his jaw tight. He had wanted to protect this life, this fragile peace, but now it lay in ruins. His secret was no longer his to keep. He stepped forward, his voice low but steady. Yes, I am Li Wei, heir to the Li conglomerate. I came here not as a CEO, but as a man searching for something real. For once, I wanted to be seen not for my name or wealth, but for who I am. The villagers stared, stunned into silence. Mei Lin's eyes glistened with confusion and hurt. She whispered, almost to herself, "All this time, you lied to me." Li Wei reached for her, but she stepped back. The distance between them had never felt greater. Zhao Jian smirked, satisfied. The cracks in Li Wei's carefully built world had split wide open, and Mei Lin was standing right at the edge. The morning after the revelation, the village was divided. Some villagers whispered of betrayal, others defended Li Wei, recalling how tirelessly he had worked for the children, never flaunting wealth or demanding respect. But Mei Lin remained silent, her heart a battlefield. Li Wei had stayed away, giving her space. He sat alone by the riverbank, staring at the reflection of a man he no longer recognized. To the world, he was the heir to an empire. To this village, he had been a humble teacher. But to Mei Lin, who was he now? That evening, the schoolyard filled once more. Zhao Jian returned, exploiting the chaos. "Villagers," he announced, "you see the truth now. This man deceived you all. But I, Zhao Jian, have always been honest. Support me, and I will build you a new school, twice as large, 10 times as grand. You need not cling to a liar." The villagers looked uncertain. Some murmured agreement, others lowered their heads. Then, a child's voice cut through the noise. Little Yun, a boy who had learned to read under Li Wei's patient guidance, stepped forward. "Teacher Li is not a liar," he shouted, tears welling in his eyes. "He taught me every day, even when he was tired. He fixed the roof when it rained. He cared about us. He is our teacher." The crowd stirred. More children gathered around, clinging to Li Wei's legs, their voices rising in chorus. "Teacher Li! Teacher Li!" Zhao Jian's face darkened. He turned toward Mei Lin. "Principal Mei, end this nonsense. Choose. Either stand with me and secure your school's future, or cling to a man who deceived you and dragged this village down with him." All eyes fell on her. Mei Lin's chest tightened. Her thoughts raced, the long nights Li Wei spent repairing desks, his quiet smiles, his laughter with the children, the way he had asked her to trust him. But also, the sting of his deception, the secret he had kept. She stepped forward, voice trembling but resolute. "Zhao Jian, you offer wealth, but not sincerity. Li Wei may have hidden his name, but he never hid his heart. Every action he took here was real. That's the man I choose to trust." A hush fell over the square. Zhao Jian sneered. "Foolish woman." His eyes blazed with fury, but before he could speak further, the villagers themselves turned against him. "Go, Zhao Jian. We don't want your arrogance." They chased him from the square, his threats echoing into the night. Li Wei stood frozen, disbelief and relief washing over him. Mei Lin turned to him, her eyes softening. "I don't care about the heir of the Li conglomerate," she whispered. "I care about the teacher who believed in our children. But promise me, Li Wei, no more secrets." He took her hands, voice breaking. "No more secrets. Only truth, only us." The villagers cheered, children dancing around them. The village bells rang, not for wealth or power, but for love found in truth. As the moon rose above the rooftops, Li Wei realized he had gained something even greater than an empire. He had gained a home for his heart. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Until we meet again in the next story, take care and keep the magic of imagination alive.